18 years from tonight, Grant Gill will become a comedy legend when he totally kills it at his improv class's graduation performance. Knees will be slapped. Hilarity will ensue. That's why he's already keeping himself in shape and razor sharp today with wellness tips and tools from AARP to help make sure his health lives as long as he does. Because the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Learn more at aarp.org/healthyliving.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. Born on this date, we have four of them. In 1790, Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation, John Ross of the original village of Turkeytown, that was located along the bottom of what's now Weiss Lake. In 1854, Surgeon General of the Army William Gorgas of Toulminville, which is still a neighborhood in Mobile. Gorgas is known for his work in yellow fever and malaria abatement. The man was on the right side of the humans versus skeeters war. Now, in 1944, former Governor Bob Riley, and in 1964, radio talk show host Rick Burgess of The Rick and Bubba Show. Today is National Techies Day. It'd be a good day to share a nice word to the underappreciated IT folks in your life, although they'll probably make you fill out a work ticket before they'll return your call. Hey, do y'all know what we're going to call all the people who are buying extra domestically produced toilet paper because of the dock workers strike? We're going to call them non-listeners. You try to help some people, you know. Today, we have a new medical treatment, some DNA evidence creating questions in a death row case, a law that kept a city from lowering a grocery tax, the NCAA tournament returning, and more. I'm Mike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama. There's a new treatment now in use in Alabama for folks with peripheral arterial disease. That means people with closing or blocked arteries in the arms or legs. AL.com's Savannah Tryons-Fernandez reports that St. Vincent's became the first hospital in the state to successfully implant dissolvable stents for those who need to be treated below the knee. The treatment is named the Esprit BTK system. It's intended for patients whose plaque buildup in the leg arteries is so severe that the lack of blood flow might require losing part of the leg. The FDA just approved the treatment in April. The hospital says the procedure involved is minimally invasive. The stent is implanted through a catheter, emits a drug that helps heal the blood vessel, then dissolves. DNA evidence may call into question the conviction of an Alabama man who's been on death row for decades. Jonathan Sobolewski has more.
A man who spent most of his life on death row for a 1992 murder he confessed to is getting a shot to fight for his freedom after another man's DNA was determined to be in the victim over 30 years later. Authorities say in 1992, Christopher Barber, a homeless man, and two friends showed up at Thelma Roberts' home in Montgomery, Alabama. Police say she invited the men to come inside and drink, and while there, Christopher Barber held Miss Roberts down while his friend sexually assaulted her, before Barber stabbed her to death and set small fires around the house. Barber confessed to the crime, but later recanted that confession, saying it was coerced by police who kept hitting and threatening him. Thelma Roberts' husband, who was also interviewed by police for the crime, claimed that the police physically assaulted him during their interrogation as well. Barber was a homeless man who said he didn't even know Mrs. Roberts. Still, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. But now his story is getting some attention from the courts, after attorneys for Barber presented evidence that the DNA found in the victim belonged to another man who was already in jail for a similar crime. Attorneys say a new test determined the semen found in Mrs. Roberts after her death belonged to Jerry Tyrone Jackson, who was a neighbor of the victim at the time and is currently serving time in jail for a sexual assault and stabbing death. Jackson had been friends with the victim's children and was unaccounted for during the murder. A federal judge has set a conference hearing on the case for October after expressing doubts about the state's new theory in the murder. The state contends that Mrs. Roberts, a 40-year-old church-going woman, had consensual sex with Jerry Tyrone Jackson, who was 16 years old at the time and a friend to her children, and later invited a separate group of homeless men into her home to drink before she was assaulted and killed. The judge said the theory, quote, defies logic, common sense, and science. As the case proceeds through the courts, we'll keep you updated at AL.com.
Thanks, Sobo. For more on that, AL.com's Ivana Rinkiu has an in-depth story on AL.com. Now, if you don't see it on the homepage, you can search the site for, quote, "He's been on death row for decades," or if you're on Twitter, I shared it really early this morning, at Ike Morgan. A year ago, the Hoover City Council passed a measure to lower the city sales tax on groceries from 3.5% to 3% beginning this October. The council was working under the assumption that it was permitted by state law to reduce the tax up to 25%. Well, AL.com's William Thornton reports that the tax cut is now on hold because the state actually permits a tax cut of exactly 25%. So barring any changes to that in court or otherwise, the city's only option would have been to reduce the city income tax on groceries to 2.625%, which they didn't do. They stopped at 3%. Also, the state requires that the previous year's growth of a municipality's general fund be greater than 2% in order to lower your grocery tax. It's really hard out there for a tax cutter. The Hoover City Council, at its next meeting, is expected to repeal the new ordinance and revert to the previous tax rate for now. Alabama Power says it's reached a settlement with the EPA over its coal ash dumping at Plant Berry, reports AL.com's Sarah White's Kodacheck. The utility emphasized that the agreement doesn't confirm or allege negative environmental effects from the unlined coal ash pond near Mobile. The agreement also doesn't address the coal ash that's still sitting there. The environmental group Mobile Baykeeper, however, argues that it's still a problem that, quote, "millions of tons of coal ash remain saturated in groundwater in the unlined pond, polluting nearby waterways in a manner that does not comply with federal law," end quote. Now, according to Alabama Power, the settlement requires it to add groundwater monitoring wells and better monitor the ponds. Mercury, arsenic, cadmium, and other toxins are present in coal ash. The NCAA men's basketball tournament will return to Birmingham in March 2028, reports AL.com's Greg Garrison. The first 2 rounds of the 2023 tournament were also held at the BJCC's Legacy Arena when number 1 seed Alabama came to town. And again, the Southeastern Conference will host the first 2 rounds of the 28 tournament. Before that, however, a 2025 NCAA women's regional bracket will be played at Legacy. Thank y'all so much for listening. We're going to come back here again tomorrow, and it's quiz day. Until then, y'all come by and see us anytime you want to on the internet at AL.com.
Whoever said it's lonely at the top clearly wasn't an Alabama fan. I'm Ben Flanagan from AL.com, the host of Beat Everyone, a new podcast focused on the people, stories, and traditions that Bama fans care about. Beat Everyone is also your new home for Alabama radio legend Eli Gold.
Touchdown, Alabama!
Subscribe now to Beat Everyone on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.